Hello, my name is Dr. Jarvis Watson. I'm the Assistant Dean for Multicultural Affairs here at Stony Brook University, and welcome to our show, A Community of Scholars. This show is comprised of several different courses, Africana Studies 283, as well as Theater 488, and it's a collection of a couple different departments, the Office of Multicultural Affairs, Journalism, Africana Studies, as well as a studio, which we have here. Our conversation will combine a number of different voices from the students, faculty, and staff. But without further ado, I just want to say thank you to all of you all who are here today, as well as pass this conversation over to our host, Aksa, and she will go into our topic, which will be...
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Aksa Khan. Welcome back to our Community of Scholars. In this segment, we will talk about the environment. We'll start off with Professor Malcolm Bowman.
I'm a professor of oceanography here at Stony Brook University, and I teach ocean physics, I teach climate science, I teach engineering, and I teach environmental studies. One of my classes is called Prospects for Planet Earth. That's a very provocative title, and so some of the prospects are good, some are excellent, some are so-so, and some are downright scary. When I teach about climate science, I also have to talk about population issues, that the world's population is continuing to increase at an alarming rate. And then since the industrial age, of course, we've been living off fossil fuels, and those fossil fuels that were under the earth for 80 million years, we are extracting and using in 1 or 2 human lifetimes. So we have a huge problem. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is a body of the world's leading climate scientists from all nations, are ringing alarm bells that the predictions of climate change are getting worse and worse. We're on what we call a worst case scenario. When I leave the studio and I drive my car home, those exhaust fumes, that carbon dioxide, gets up into the air. In 2 or 3 days, it's at Europe. It's still 100 years from now, half of it is still there. It's a global problem. It affects all of us. How do we solve this? This is the biggest problem facing humankind.
So we've been hearing a lot about how the oceans are warming up a lot faster than we thought. I just want to ask one question. What happens when the ocean warms up? Why is that important?
Well, when the ocean warms up, several things can happen from a multitude of points of view. From a biological point of view, organisms that require a certain temperature cannot survive. In 1999 here in Long Island Sound, we had a lobster kill. Those lobsters cooked basically that summer. They have never come back. Ocean warming also, water expands when it heats, so sea level will rise because of that. And a third example is hurricanes. Hurricanes feed off, their energy source is the heat of the tropical oceans. And so warmer temperatures create many problems.
Thank you. I'd like to throw it to the students. What are your concerns about the environment? Elvis, would you like to start?
Yes. Hi, my name is Elvis. So I actually took a course, an environmental studies course last semester, and I was learning about the effects of like ocean warming and like sea level rise, and it's very scary. It's very scary to live, especially in the United States, and we are a country that very much is high on that use of fossil fuels and use of like industrialization and stuff like that, and this push for industrialization in our country. So it's a very alarming thing, to having to witness and see communities, especially communities that live near like the oceans and live near seas, just impacted by sea level rise. I don't remember which country it was, but there was one country, I think it was in the Pacific Ocean, that like entire island was basically wiped out due to sea level rise and on ocean warming. And it's just very alarming. And I think we all need to do something about it. The government definitely needs to do something about it. It's a very scary topic, and I feel like the government now, with our Republican president, our Republican Congress, that drive towards energy efficient use and to drive away from those things that are causing these levels to go at an alarming rate is very, like, I just don't feel like they're doing enough. I just feel like they say this, that like I care about the environment, but do they really? You know?
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, and I would very much like to hear the professor's thoughts on the recent election in Brazil and the move towards populism as a reactionary movement against attempts to regulate the environment and such. And there are reports now that the new president-elect in Brazil is going to do irreparable harm to the already endangered Amazon rainforest, which is critical to, oxygen, putting oxygen into the atmosphere and also helping fight against ocean acidification.
Professor, would you like to talk about that?
A year ago, all the nations of the world assembled in Paris and thrashed out a new climate agreement. The United States is in the process of withdrawing from that agreement unilaterally. Brazil now is starting to follow. And so we're losing the leadership role we should have amongst all the nations of the world in coming to grips with this problem. This week, 2 days ago, was the 6th anniversary of Superstorm Sandy that caused a huge amount of harm and human misery. This region, New York City, Long Island, is just as vulnerable as it was 6 years ago. There's all stories of human misery I continue to hear below the news radar. People lost their homes, their jobs, their houses. And so we still haven't come to grips. We're told now we have 14 years left to change our ways. Can we do it?
So let me make one comment that we'll come to later. The correspondence between what are called populist governments, but should be called rightist governments, and a malicious policy in general, including environmental policy, is something we should return to in the later topic. But in response to your question, I would really like to ask Malcolm, what is a realistic, assuming we had a government that was committed, what is a realistic time frame for a transition to complete renewable energy? A generation, 2 generations? What do you think?
That's the $64,000 question. Given if we changed our will, if we changed our ways, how quickly could we get off fossil fuels? We're not going to, even if we stop using 100% fossil fuels today, that CO2 is going to be in the atmosphere for 100 years. Methane gas, 20, 30 years. So can we do it? It's going to take a massive change in the way society works. I mean, the Europeans are 10, 20 years ahead of us. We've been in a state of denial, both politically and in the public. Corporations have a lot more power in the United States than they do, say, in Europe. And so it's harder to make social change, but we have to do it. We have to do it.
Thank you. Would anybody from the student side like to speak?
Hello, my name is Alexia, and I'm a health science major. I just wanted to say, from like a personal opinion, I feel like the issue of like global warming and stuff like is not spoken about like more like I would say like politics and like economy and like racism and stuff like that. I feel like people know it's a problem, but it's just like there. Like it's not in social media. I don't see nothing about global warming. I don't really take classes that's about global warming, like because it's not a part of my major or stuff like that. And I just feel like not necessarily that people are not interested, but I feel like they don't care enough to like because you need to, and the problem is you need to care because you might wake up one day you start blowing in like black air or something like that. Like there are things that can happen. That's bizarre, and it needs to be spoken about more. And I feel like that's my personal opinion on it.
Do you think there's more that we can do as people who aren't affiliated with the government? How can we make changes in our daily lives? And this is a question for everybody.
Well, for me, I agree with you. I feel like people say like we live in New York, all the natural disasters and all the harsh effects of our country have been happening like primarily in the South with hurricanes and stuff like that. But nobody has really, like since we're in New York, nobody has really gained that fear of like flooding, that fear of like sea level. Yes, that fear of sea level rising. Like when Superstorm Sandy hit, like that's when it clicked. You can see the damage that sea level rising can do. It flooded an entire subway station, and that subway station took years to repair. It flooded almost all of Lower Manhattan, and the subways took days to repair. So that's just like a glimpse of what could happen if we don't change. The New York City, like the global phenomenon of the world, can still be susceptible to environmental damage if we don't change anything.
Yeah, just my name is Claudio, by the way. I'm an economics major. Just to add on that, I feel like that's a very important topic. Like, we don't really feel like it's as important until it happens. Like, we never really feel like, oh, this is not gonna happen. We're in New York. No, it happens. Flooded, hurricane, all that. Like, even Sandy, which was big on Long Island. People really weren't, like, I guess, feeling important. You know, they felt like they weren't as prepared. Well, next time we have to be prepared, so, because these things happen, so.
Yeah, I would say, to quickly sum it up, in the media, there's this trend of talking about, when global warming is mentioned as a major headline, there's a question mark afterwards. You know, crisis, question mark, when in reality it should be in bigger letters, and there should be a period after the word, you know, global environmental crisis.
Absolutely.
What are we doing?
Or an exclamation point.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I think, can we pass the mic to Michelle?
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm a bio major. And to answer your question from earlier, I feel like everyone can do something to help in global warming and to help climate change. You might not think that, oh, using a second straw, using plastic utensils, just recycling, that it makes no difference, but it really does, because that straw can end up in the ocean. A fish will eat it. It basically has a ripple effect on our society and how our future will be. And I just want everyone to realize that it's the small changes that make a difference.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we have just a little bit time left, so I'd like to take one last comment from Dr. Segal.
Given that many people, especially including in the United States, are having a hard time, you know, surviving due to the economy, and given that switch to renewables will increase costs for electricity and other necessities, I believe we have an obligation to make the transition as efficiently as possible. So I want to ask Professor Bowman what sorts of policies he thinks would be most efficient for doing so. A carbon tax, a cap and trade?
A carbon tax, excuse me, has been an unpopular topic, but however, the governor of the state of Washington, up for re-election on Tuesday, has included a referendum on a carbon tax for the state of Washington, and if that passes, that will expand, I think, and that will propagate throughout some of the other states. So I think a carbon tax, in other words, you're taxed by the amount of polluting carbon you use, but then you get credits for things that are helpful, like solar energy. And here's another very unpopular topic. There may be a need to develop a modern branch of nuclear power stations, which are called fast breeder reactors, and there are professors at this university who are proponents, but nuclear power is very unpopular in the United States from a political point of view. But maybe it'll be necessary to get off fossil fuels fast enough.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's segment. Our next segment will answer the question, what do we want our future to look like in America?